This is Rating Descending.
where we watch IMDb's worst 250 movies so you don't have to.
I'm Michelle St. Clair.
And I'm Abigail Ward.
And this week we watched Grease 2. A British student at a 1960s American high school must prove himself to the leader of a girls' gang whose members can only date greasers. Let's watch.
This is a very special episode. We have a guest star with us, the lovely comedian, performer, wonderful standout person, screenwriter. There's so many things I could tick down the line, but I also don't know all of them. It's Alice Tovey, the one, the only.
Hello, how are we, friendos?
Hey.
We're so good. Me and Alice went to uni together studying screenwriting, so she knows her stuff. And she also did a wonderful show at the Melbourne Comedy Festival called Doggo, which we had the pleasure of watching in April, and I dragged Michelle along. It was great.
You didn't
Thank you.
Wait.
Thank you for being dragged.
I wanted to be clear. I wasn't dragged. I knew of
held you by the hair. I strapped you in the seat, made you watch it again and again.
I want to go see that show of my own volition. I thought it was great.
I mean, that's beautiful. Like, free will is pretty necessary when it comes to watching comedy, so I'm very grateful that you wanted to be there.
But yay, Alice, you're here, and I'm so excited that you're here. And we really wanted you here because you're a performer. You do your own like cabaret and dancing and singing, and like you know a lot of musical theatre. You have a strong musical theatre background, don't you, Del?
I do. I initially trained as a classical musician in classical voice to be an opera singer.
Oh, cool.
Didn't do that, went into comedy, but at the moment I am writing a musical. So I've written one musical, I'm writing my second at the moment.
Fuck you, I
fuck
didn't know
yeah.
that. Pitch it to me.
Oh, it's hush hush at the moment. It's hush hush,
Oh,
but
I
when
love
it's
that.
pitchable, I'll definitely be posting around the shops about it. But my goodness, this musical that I watched was not a musical.
But I'm not saying I don't believe you, by the way, about it being hush hush, but I think that's a great like delaying tactic when people ask you to pitch ideas. I've never thought of that.
I can't.
Oh, it's confidential at the moment. It's a bit hush hush. You know, too many fingers in this pie, so I can't really talk about it at the moment. That's a great idea.
Oh, it's a classic. If anyone doesn't work in showbiz, what have you, if anyone ever says, "Oh, I can't really talk about it right now," it's because it's not done and they don't really know what it's about yet. They just have a few sticky notes on the wall. They're like, "I'll write it." Not me though. I'm a professional.
No. Yeah, yours is put together. It's when other people do it, that's when it's just sort of a loose assembly of ideas. Mm-hmm. That pivot from like classical training music into comedy, how did that start? Like, what were those early days as a comedian? And like, did you start bringing in music straight away, or was it just straight stand-up jokes? How did that happen?
So when I was at uni, I kind of quickly realized that opera singing might not be for me. It's a beautiful art form, and I have a lot of mates who still work in opera, and they're fantastic. But singing the songs of old dead white men wasn't going to be my jam going ahead. And while I was at uni, I auditioned for a student comedy review, and I've made lifelong friends from that. It was fantastic. And through that, I got into sketch. And during the show, I wrote my first comedy songs. I remember doing this really long, drawn-out number where I put all of my friends in big pregnancy outfits called Childbirth the Musical, and yeah, that's when a star was born.
Oh, I can imagine. That's the most Alice thing I've ever heard. I love that like your flavor of comedy really does central around like it gravitates around like femininity, womanhood, and a lot of like LGBT issues, and yeah, it's very on brand for you to make that kind of musical. And
I love
I'm
gay.
absolutely not surprised. Oh, and doggos as well.
Yeah, gay dogs and women is that's my vibe. If I could encapsulate myself in a can of comedy, yum yum.
That's a pretty solid trio. I mean, we do similar, but swap out dogs for cats. I have nothing against dogs personally. It's just not where my comedy comes from.
No, that's beautiful.
You know?
I do have a cat in the other room, so I love all sorts. Very bisexual of me to have cats and dogs.
Yeah, you're
Yeah.
the most bisexual person I've ever met in my entire life. You are just one
Are you
long
serious?
bisexual vibe. Oh, I'm absolutely serious. Absolutely. And like hand on my heart. And I am bisexual. You are the most bisexual woman I've ever met.
Where were you in my late teens to early 20s to be like, hey, dum-dum, you're bi. You're not just sad. Like you are, but you're not just sad.
I was probably in a relationship with a woman in high school at that time. So yeah.
Oh, so jelly. So jelly.
Yeah, get on my level, all right?
Yeah.
The true bi experience is really thinking that you're gay in high school, but then being like, oh, men are okay, I guess. Maybe. I don't know.
I thought
That's
the true
crazy.
bi experience was just dating a bunch of athletes who are men and being like, that's all right. And no, it's not.
Earlier in the year at Melbourne Comedy Festival, during Melbourne's brief interlude from lockdown, you had your show Doggo, which, as Abby mentioned, she and I went to go see. I loved it. I thought it was great.
I dragged you along.
Yeah.
Michelle hated
Kicking
it. She
and
hated it.
screaming. I was like,
She was
you
untalented,
can't get me
not
out
bi
here.
enough.
Not bi enough.
Not bi enough.
I did notably make a joke to Abby on the way, which is that as soon as Gen Z finds out about this title, they're going to scream.
Oh, I love the Zoom. If I could get the Zoomer audience, that would be so special because I have such reverence for cool young people in bucket hats who don't care.
But also care extremely.
Oh, yeah.
It's both.
Yeah, yeah. It's like this absolute diligent effort to come across as completely nonchalant, but like they dominate TikTok and I'm so intimidated by them. When I see like a group of like young 16-year-old girls walking towards me in like low-rise jeans and like crop tops, I'm like, they're going to beat the shit out of me. They just are.
With nails so long you can't wipe your ass, and that's confidence.
There's no coming back from that if it goes wrong even once.
All these bidet bitches walking around in low-rise jeans with nails where you can't wipe your ass, just knowing that their asshole is clean, but they're not doing it. No manual labor's happening.
I hope I
Yeah.
one day get described as a bidet bitch. I love that.
I one day hope I get a bidet. That's the dream for me.
Dream bigger, darling.
That's all I got. Look, life's pretty good, to be fair.
Oh, that's nice. I'm happy for you.
But how did Doggo come together? Like, what was the impetus for? I mean, you talk about it a little bit in the show, so I guess spoilers. If you don't need to give away good material, but
Oh, bless you. Wow, it's really taking me back. Funnily enough, I was meant to premiere a new season of the show yesterday if Melbourne were not in lockdown. Yeah, lockdown.
Yay.
But it's fine. But I started writing the show in 2019 to premiere in 2020, and it was a show about kind of radical acceptance and joy through celebrating dogs. And as we went through 2020 and came into 2021, like, I didn't realize how prescient it would be that we were going to need a lot of joy going forward. So I'm super glad I made the show. It was an absolutely bananas off the wall show where I just ran around in my underpants. And I love making art like that. I love running around in my underpants being happy.
You're in your underpants right now, and it's hot.
And it's hot.
it's so hot. Just listeners, just so you know, Alice is wearing the most convoluted pair of underwear I've ever seen. Just absolutely balls to the wall, both literally and metaphorically.
There's a fidget spinner in there just for fun.
Yeah, it's somehow both like netted, but also incredible. It looks very spiky and sharp to the touch.
Oh, lingerie. Like, I've got maybe 3 pairs of lingerie. They're on for 30 seconds. Then I'm like, nah, gone. These are nipples. They're better.
Yeah, I mean, just normal pairs of underwear can be pretty sexy, but maybe that's just because I'm like, I really got to justify my own self-image. So I'm like, I think the sexiest thing is just how a woman looks.
And you're quite right. Like, when you have an ass as large as mine, every pair of underpants is a G-string. I live in permanent sexy land.
Is it a G-string or a wedgie or both?
It's both. And it's fashion.
At all times. I love that every fucking day I wake up with a full-on wedgie. That's my life. The underwear goes right up the crack all night. It's such a look.
Your fiance is a lucky man, babe.
Oh, so lucky. Watching me fucking pull it out of my sweaty cheeks at 8 a.m.
Yum, yum,
every
yum, yum, yum,
fucking
yum,
day.
yum, yum.
Yum. Get your nose in it.
Well, Doggo was a musical that I really liked, but a musical that we didn't like. To pivot in.
What a pivot.
Yeah. This week we watched Grease 2.
Boy, did we.
Which obviously, as like being a sequel to an incredibly, like we've had a string of sequels, I feel, not just recently, but generally along the podcast. And I feel like what they're sequels to is getting more and more notable. And Grease is a real tough act to follow. And boy, did this not live up.
Not at all. It was
It didn't, but like I have to say, I said this to Alice last night because we were both watching it last night. I had a terrible day yesterday. Like I had this big stress, like anxiety attack, and I got into bed knowing I had to watch Grease 2, resigning myself to it. It lifted my mood. It elevated my mood. I walked out of the movie feeling fresh and renewed for various reasons. Yes, it was a pile of trash, but it was like the best pile of trash I've ever watched. It had so much attention to detail and so much like effort put into it. And it had Michelle Pfeiffer. So
Yeah.
need I say more?
attention to detail where? Attention to detail where?
The costumes.
Look, I mean, I didn't save any of them for the trivia section, so I'm not getting ahead of myself, but I will say there is a shocking amount of anachronisms in this. For a film set in 1961, almost nothing in it is from 1961.
Michelle Pfeiffer rocked up to set just in her clothes. They're like, put on this costume, Michelle Pfeiffer, and she's like, absolutely not. And then just continued to do the movie in 80s clothes.
It is the most 80s feeling thing set in the 60s I've ever seen.
Yeah, maybe, look, honestly, my viewing was probably warped by the fact that I needed something to, like, restore my energy and vigor for living itself. And then Grease 2, I was like, this is bananas and insane, and, like, it's making me feel better. But you're right. Look, I didn't think about that aspect. I was wowed by the colors and music, even though it was terrible. I didn't care. I was like, yeah, it's fun.
Blinded
I think
by
this
the
is a
light.
movie that gets an A+ for sheer efforts. Because they do so much plot in this film. They chuck so much into this film and do nothing with it, but good on you for just doing things.
Oh, yeah. You can tell that there's like a lot on the cutting room floor, a lot from different script revisions. There is arguably more going on than in Grease 1, which is a very thin plot as it is. None of it makes sense, but it's great. There's a lot happening.
And again, my perception has been warped by the fact that when I go into the movie of the week, I'm expecting to be bored or upset by the end of it. So the fact that I was just like wowed by lots of bright colors and noises, I was like, this is great. Like, this is like high on my list of things that we've watched so far. I couldn't believe that it was so far down, considering things that we've gone through prior. It's warped.
I think you can't help but compare this movie to its successor, because Grease, what it has going for it. So two things are going for it. The first one is two absolutely ripper leads. So you've got John Travolta at the height of his charisma. You've got Olivia Newton-John at the height of her Girl Next Door. They are dynamic. Now, they've nailed one aspect of that. Like, Michelle Pfeiffer, you can't take your eyes off her the whole film. She's just so watchable and so incredible.
She's really
And the
good.
leading man, I forget his name, his character's name. It might be James, who knows.
Michael?
But he's very hot, so, like, good on him.
Yeah, good on you. His hair looked very luscious and soft. So that's
it did
my
look
comment.
soft, and it did look
Yeah, it looked
probably the
very
most
soft.
like 50s, early 60s thing about the whole movie was that guy's hair.
Oh, yeah, and he's a bit incelly, but perfectly fine. But the second thing that Grease has going for it that Grease 2 isn't, where Grease is a movie about young love, Grease 2 is a movie about getting roots. So in Grease
for
1,
sure.
you've got
Yes.
it's so much rooting, more rooting than
so
any other modern movie I've
horny.
seen.
So
Yeah,
horny.
it's so horny. They keep talking about scoring. Like in the last final moment where they're all singing their hearts out, one of the guys turns to the girls and he's like, "When am I gonna get a score?" And like it's just like they're still just like they're ready to fuck the entire. There's a whole song called "Reproduction."
Reproduction
Like, it's just-
is
gonna
the bop of
score
the film.
tonight. Oh, it is. But that moment, by the way, that you're talking about, Abby, just because I don't want to forget it, is literally like one of the pairs is like, finally we love each other. Another pair is like, I accept that you're gonna show off your body and who you are, and she's like, thank you, I appreciate that. And then it goes to another couple, and he's like, when are we gonna fuck? And she's like, can't we just be pals? And that's the last line in the movie is that.
Yeah, and I mean that's the couple where he tried to coerce her into sex by We'll get into that. How about you do the overview
Holy
so we can really
dooly.
just launch into all this bullshit?
Yeah, I
Run us
feel
through it.
this has the potential to be a real thick a real thick episode. So
Sode.
I'll get into the overview.
So I was already jumping into my thesis statement. I've got 3 pages of phone notes on this that are mainly just things in capital letters.
Oh, I love it. If it, look, this is meant to be my episode, but I feel like this is going to be Alice's episode. Like it's going to be you
I'm
leading.
here for it. I'm gonna sit back with my hands behind my head, total power move, and just let you run the show, baby girl.
No, I'll get into the overview. Key details first. 1982, 4 years after Grease 1. The director was Patricia Birch, who was the choreographer of the original Grease and the stage musical, this was her first and currently only theatrical directing credit, which I think
Makes sense.
is a bummer, both because I think there's times she did a good job, but also the choreography in this movie was one of the weaker parts of it.
Yeah, there was definitely bits where people were noticeably just out of line with each other. Like they weren't dancing at the same beat,
Yeah.
which was like even in the first, like the opening scene, I noticed that.
Mind you, she set herself a pretty difficult task because the opening number has roughly 1,000 people dancing at the same time. The cast size is mind-blowing.
Yeah. It was starring, as we mentioned, Michelle Pfeiffer. Maxwell Caulfield played Michael.
Maxwell Caulfield.
Yeah.
He looks like a Caulfield, 100%. That snotty little face.
And there's,
In the nicest way.
just like Grease won an extensive supporting cast, but some of the notable ones were Lorna Luft plays Paulette, and she's one of Judy Garland's daughters, so she's a half-sister to Liza Minnelli. And Pamela Segal played Dolores, the youngest one of the Pink Ladies, who notably was later the voice of Bobby Hill from King of the Hill.
Oh, okay.
There you go.
Totally
and may
random.
I also point out, Chris McDonald was in this movie.
Yes.
Shooter McGavin from Happy Gilmore.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Like he was like the tall, lanky one.
He
with
was
the very, like,
Goose.
chisel. Yeah.
Yeah, who served comedy the whole time. Like,
Yeah.
did
He
not
really
miss a
did.
beat.
There's a reason that
he
he's
was
been
like
in
one
like
of the standouts.
100 roles. But I was actually about to get to Chris McDonald because he's been on this list before. I feel like it might be worth it. Now we should start talking about returning actors. He was the villain in Superhero Movie.
Oh my God, yeah. God, that takes me back. That was a dire time in the podcast, man.
As well as Maureen Teefy played, she's like the only character whose name I forget, but one of the Pink Ladies
Sharon.
who was in Sharon, who was in Supergirl last week as Lucy Lane. Like,
bizarrely, we just saw her, and I know that she does not have many acting credits, so that's really
I looked at,
strange.
she's in like 10 movies and
Yeah.
we had 2 of them in a row on this list.
Yeah, because I was looking her up
Wow.
last week, and it was like she was only in Supergirl and Grease 2, and I was like, are you kidding me? Like we're about to revisit Maureen, and she's in like all of 10 films.
Yeah.
Now, may I ask, Maureen, which one of the... Because with the Pink Lady archetypes, there was Michelle Pfeiffer was the leader. There
Yes.
was the horny one.
That was Judy Garland's daughter.
and there was
Yeah.
the one who was not horny. Was she the one who was not horny?
Yes.
Yeah, Sharon.
Okay, great.
And then there was Rhonda, who was meant to be the equivalent of Marty, but clearly all of her scenes get cut. Like, she has absolutely no screen time, and the actress doesn't even have a Wikipedia page. She has an IMDb page.
Michelle, you have a thorough knowledge of Grease. Who was Marty in Grease
you.
1?
Marty was the one of the Pink Ladies who totally starts getting hit on by the TV host Vince Fontaine, and you're like, hey man, that's a child. Anyway, she's meant to be the like wealthy one who also has a bunch of boyfriends who are Marines. They're all like pen pal boyfriends.
I have a lot of thoughts about Grease 1, and I feel like I just clearly don't remember it as much as I thought I did.
She's paired up with Sunny, and it's easily the worst pairing of the whole of Grease 1 because neither of them like each other. In this,
You gotta
she's
get
paired
the
up with
heads
Goose.
together.
Sonny, the fella who looks
Like
like
he's
a real
40?
estate agent.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he's that guy. Who has lines like, do you want some salami? Which is such a weird request in Grease 1. I always think of that
All
line.
I want is a boy to ask me if I want salami. That's love.
Yeah, Rhonda's like the equivalent to her. But to move on, the budget for this was $11.2 million, double the budget of Grease 1, and it made $15.2 million, which is why it was considered a flop.
Yeah, fair enough. Do you know how much Grease 1 made?
Oh boy, I
Probably
don't.
a fuck ton, right?
But I could look it up
It was.
now, and then I could just cut out the bit where I say I don't know.
It was pretty. I'm pretty sure that Grease 1 was an absolute hit because my mum in high school, and she graduated in 1978, so it was the year it came out. They put on Grease as a play, so I think it was just like an instant hit.
I feel like also every wedding has to pay some royalties to the musical Grease because if you don't play the mega mix, then you aren't married under Australian law.
100%.
The box office alone for Grease 1 is $366 million. So when your sequel
Ooh.
makes 15, you're underperforming, perhaps.
That's a lot of salami that they did not bring back to the butcher.
And then now the actual overview proper. 2 years after the events of Grease, Sandy's cousin, the clean-cut Michael Carrington, is the new senior at Rydell High. He is welcomed to the school by Frenchie and quickly takes an interest in the new leader of the Pink Ladies, Stephanie Zanoni, who has recently split with the current leader of the T-Birds, Johnny. Michael quickly realizes that he will only win Stephanie's affection if he is a cool rider and decides to assist the T-Birds with their homework for cash so that he can save up for a motorcycle. Meanwhile, both the T-Birds and Pink Ladies audition for the school's talent show to attempt to win the 100 album prize. One night at the local bowling alley, the rival gang, the Cycle Lords, surprise the T-Birds, but are chased off by the sudden appearance of a mysterious rider who is secretly Michael. Stephanie grows closer with both this cool rider and with the real Michael, enraging Johnny. On the night of the talent show, Johnny and the T-Birds see the mysterious rider and chase him off to his apparent accidental death. They all return to the talent show where a mournful Stephanie wins, along with Johnny. At the school luau, the Cycle Lords appear once more, but are again chased off by the still-alive mysterious rider who finally reveals himself as Michael. Johnny declares Michael a member of the T-Birds, allowing him and Stephanie to finally date as they all graduate. You could probably hear me towards the back half of that getting confused because the plot is just weirder and weirder as it continues on. Like the scenes where she is crying about someone dying and that causes her to win, or the arbitrary rules around who the Pink Ladies can date. It's a strange movie.
It's such a strange movie, Michelle, and it goes from no stakes to the most stakes like that. So they're just auditioning for a talent show to win some albums, and then someone dies.
Yeah.
Someone dies.
And they all still go.
But the scene where she's crying on stage thinking about, like, the scene that she wins the talent show, when she's going into that fantasy and it's like the rider on like in like that white mist and they're singing each other, that for me was the standout of the entire film. I want to get it out of the way before I forget it, because that was for me, that's what brought me out of my slump. I was like, this is the best thing I've ever seen. I don't care. Like, this is incredible quality. This is incredible. Like, it's not good quality, but I'm getting my bang for my buck with this film. It was hokey and stupid and I loved it. I enjoyed it so thoroughly.
Genuinely a really cool sequence where they actually bought apparently like tens of motorbikes from a junkyard and then painted them white so that they could actually stack them up into this mountain that then Maxwell Caulfield is standing on. Yeah.
Yeah. But he's standing there so awkwardly.
It's such a shame that they filmed that sequence on a Nokia so you can't see any of the detail of the motorcycles.
It's perhaps a little too misty. And it's also a shame that the lead-in is that they're finally doing their big performance, and then Michelle Pfeiffer stops singing as we hear her memories as her ex-boyfriend chases her current love interest off to his death. And she's grieving for a death that night. It's so weird. It's so much more intense than it needed to be.
She's a performer. She went on with the show and then she had a complete collapse halfway through it, but she won anyway.
Yeah, she did win anyway, which also is one of the there's a few times in this movie, I get really pedantic with musicals. Musicals primarily, the song is metatextual. Like, they're singing and we're not meant to think they're actually singing and dancing. There's very few occasions where they actually are singing and dancing, right? This movie is the same as Grease 1, where they're not really singing and dancing, but then after she sings, they all react as if she did actually sing that song.
Yeah, it makes you question the logic of the film. Like, when they're actually doing these... But the thing is, like, when she's talking to Michael, right? And he's like, what kind of guy do you like? And she likes a cool writer, and she explains it to him via song. It makes you think that people are part of this singing and dancing world. So according to the logic of that scene, every time they're singing and dancing, everyone understands what is happening around them. She is really singing just on stage, and they're all experiencing that with her.
Yeah.
So I think let's set Cool Rider as the precedent for the logic of the Grease 2 universe.
Oh, must we? Because that song, it took a few goes to go. Luckily, they reprised the music of that song at least 15 times before the film is out. So I'm like, oh, that's the tune. It took a while to sink in.
That is one of the better songs, but it, like every song, there's a couple of the songs are explicitly horny, and then some of them, like Cool Rider, just like blast you with the horniness halfway through, where it's like, I want a cool rider who can burn me through and through. And I'm like, why so sexual?
Because they're like 17, 18, right?
Yeah, I mean...
That's how old they're meant to be. They're graduating. 18 is a
like
horny
year 12s.
time.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really horny time. Like, you've really just like... You've just finished like discovering yourself, and I feel like all you want to do is go out into the world and fuck, and it resonated. I think it's a masterpiece.
Like, reproduction... the scene in which it is a science class talking about how plants reproduce, and then they all start singing about how desperately they want to fuck for 4 full minutes, is a really accurate portrayal of what a classroom full of 16 or 17-year-olds is like.
See, to me, that is the highlight of the film. That is where the film peaks. and then everything else is a letdown. Because that is the most greasy moment of Grease 2, is just people with very deep voices singing about fucking, and I loved it.
Yeah.
Whereas I have to say that the standout bit for me, which was like the misty white motorcycle mound scene, wasn't the peak of the film, but I loved it because it almost gave me Xanadu vibes. It almost seemed like this like magical like other realm. She's in this white floaty dress. I was like, I dig it. This is fantastical.
I could talk about this movie forever. Abby, I need you to know, if the rest of this podcast was just Grease 2, I would be happy. Like, I could talk about it.
I understand. What I loved about, like, obviously you're watching Grease 2, you can't help but draw comparisons to Grease 1.
Yes.
And it really becomes apparent that, like, Michael's character, he's this English guy that's come to the school. He's the Sandy. He is the outsider from like another basically first world country that isn't America, so he's slightly exotic, and he comes to this new school and he needs to become a bit tougher and a bit more of a greaser to fit into the world and impress the person that he's trying to be with. He's the Sandy and Michelle Pfeiffer is the Danny.
Yeah.
And that was like a really fun reversal, but you watch it and you're like, this is just Grease 1 but far worse.
It's Grease 1 but far worse because the romantic leads, they don't have their summer loving. They've not built a connection. He just sees her in the hallway and is like, Michelle Pfeiffer's hot. And like, yes. But that's the entire premise of the movie. I
remember someone saying about Michelle Pfeiffer, because she's obviously considered one of the most beautiful women in the world in Hollywood. And I remember this one guy, I read this. This one guy said that she had like the mathematical construction, like the perfect mathematical constructions on her face to be beautiful. He was like, there's a very particular thing where your nose has to be a certain size in correlation with your mouth, and your mouth has to be a certain size in correlation with your eyes. And like there was this whole mathematic structure to what is beautiful, which is bullshit. But he said Michelle Pfeiffer fit into all of them, and that's why people consider her one of the most beautiful people in the world.
That sounds like some weird phrenology shit.
Sounds like a guy that had a boner for Michelle Pfeiffer.
Yeah.
And just like looked at too many photos of her.
Yeah, had time to think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But my goodness as well, with this film, again, thinking back to the first movie, because if, oh my goodness, what's the guy's name again? The English guy. He's so forgettable as a character.
Michael is the name of the character.
Michael is the name. So where Michael tries to change, Michelle Pfeiffer does not, in the way that Danny Zuko does in the first one. There is no give and take at the end of the film. So no, the characters don't go on an equal journey that makes the romance feel earned. And it's just so frustrating because this movie is brimming with potential. Like there's some great comedy in there, but it just keeps edging us and we don't come. It's just not good.
Way to keep it on theme. I would argue, though, because this movie, okay, so rather than they like each other already, as you said, their summer loving moment, but they're from different social spheres. The different social spheres analog in this is so much more arbitrary in that it's a specific rule that pink ladies are only allowed to date T-birds, which is really, really weird. So strange, but then
reddest of red flags.
Yeah. Then much like Grease 1, in which both of them go, let's change. I will try and change for you, but then Danny doesn't actually need to change and he just changes back to his normal self and then they literally fly off.
Which is my issue with Grease 1. When I worked at JB Hi-Fi, I had this reputation for hating Grease 1. So for a while they were just I don't hate Grease because I know Grease is a fantastic film. Like it actually is. Like the entire time you're engaged and captivated. It's funny. It's got the right, like it's perfect. But the end sequence fucks me up. It makes me so angry that Sandy changes herself at the last minute and they fly off in a red car together.
They have it. He shows up in a Letterman. She shows up wearing the thing. And then you have the ending.
They were about to compromise.
And then they sing gibberish and fly off. I hate it. They forgot the ending.
And I hated it so much that I ranted about it multiple times. So at JB Hi-Fi, there was a week where they just played it on every TV just to taunt me.
We love workplace bullying.
Oh, I love it. But I probably deserved it. I just kind of like ranted in too many people's ears, I suppose. But yeah, I have an issue with Grease 1 for that reason. But I have to say, at least with Grease 2, it seemed like they were trying to drive home this thing of like, especially with the villain and the blonde that is like the horniest character of all, is being like, I accept you and I love you and you don't need to change for me. They were really trying to drive that home a little bit, too much, too on the nose, and not very well. But they really tried to do that at the end of this, and I kind of appreciated that.
Oh, they really tried to do this at the end of it. They chucked a plot on the end of the plot that was already going for nearly 2 hours.
But that's what I mean. They tried, but then it's still like, okay, you're a T-bird now we can date. Like, they still do it. They go, well, the rules are dumb, but we should still follow them. Just don't do it. Okay, anyway, I get mad
I had the
about that.
funnest costume-specific thought watching this movie because there's so much talk about... There's a scene where Johnny, who's, I guess, the Kaneki equivalent in this movie, he says, that jacket is T-Bird property, give it back. And then he hands Michael the jacket at the end. I'm like, is there a T-Bird annual sewing circle to get these jackets ready for everyone?
There's a lot of questions that I have about, like, the T-Birds and the Pink Ladies in Grease 1 are, like composed entirely of, I think Americans call them seniors, which is like year 12, like the last year of high school. Who passed it down? Like, why are they just like LARPing as like, oh yeah, 2 years ago we heard some seniors were in a gang, let's take their name and jacket? I don't understand the connection. Who
are they called
passed it?
sophomores when they're seniors in high
No,
school?
that's the
You're a freshman
second
and a
year,
sophomore?
I think. It's freshman, sophomore, junior, senior. I think that's it.
Okay, got you. And so obviously it must just be a tradition. But the thing is, how many years have lapsed between Grease 1 and Grease 2?
2. So was there just no T-Birds and Pink Ladies the previous year, or like?
Great question.
So
Why are
I
we
mean-
missing out on that little interim year? Did they not have T-Birds and Pink Ladies?
It would also make more sense if it was set the year after because inexplicably Frenchie is in this movie, which is great because I love seeing Frenchie, but they just really shoehorn her in. She's like, I never finished school, so I guess I'm at school as a 30-year-old woman.
I loved the exposition that they like put in right in that opening sequence.
Yeah.
Everyone's dancing and she turns to the main character and she's like, I came back. I'm doing chemistry because I want to become what does she want to become? She wants to make beauty products?
Yeah.
Yeah, she doesn't want to do hair, but she wants to do face.
Does she affect the storyline in any way or is she just there to observe?
So this isn't me pilfering from my trivia, but I did look this up. Apparently the whole reason that, because she's in there and audience, she vanishes halfway through.
She does.
Completely disappears. The reason for that is that when they started filming, they didn't have a finished script and they were working on one where Frenchie is the character that Maxwell Caulfield can keep talking to. Right, as he does a couple of times in the first act and then once or twice again.
She's like a mentor to him at the beginning of the film.
But then as they were rewriting the script, they wrote out the character and told Didi Khan halfway through filming, we don't need you anymore.
Oh.
And then in the edit, decided to keep her scenes anyway and just not resolve it as a storyline.
What? Yeah,
the
because
weirdest combo.
they really set up her storyline being like,
Yeah.
I've come back to the high school. And like she acts as a mentor for the main character being like, this is our world. These are these people. These are these people. You can't love Stephanie. She's a pink lady. She's giving him all this advice and she has her own goal that is just never resolved.
Yeah.
That's tragic.
Yeah, it is. It's. I don't understand what the decision is. Literally, the last time we see her, she's like, Michael, I guess we better help you. And then you never see her again.
It's a criminal underuse of Didi Khan, who's an absolute legend and an icon. And instead of Didi Khan, they sub in a wise child named Dolores, who is my most hated character in this film.
Agreed.
Why is she in the
Agreed.
film?
Yeah, what is the story with
Wise
Dolores?
child.
I feel like I might have missed the detail as to why she's like a child in the Pink Ladies.
A child who inexplicably seems to be hanging out. Is it like she's a pledge, like in a fraternity?
Is she like getting trained into the Pink Ladies?
Yeah,
Is that what
trained
it
to be
is?
coerced into sex by these adult men?
You too
Yeah.
could get trapped in an army bunker by a young man and
Holy
tricked into
shit.
having sex for the first time.
Dolores, this is a sex pest, and you're gonna love him. It's kind of the vibe of the movie. She's Paulette's younger sister. Like, that's the idea. So she's Lorna Luft's
Paulette's the blonde.
Paulette's the
Oh,
blonde.
the horny
and-
one. Oh,
with
right.
Jodie, yeah.
Okay.
The Judy Garland
Got you.
daughter. And yeah, so she's
gotcha.
Paulette's younger sister, and she says to Michael, I want to be part of the Pink Ladies. They said no, so I offered to be their mascot. And the implication is they put up with her being around in response and in exchange, she just does whatever the fuck they tell her.
Okay, got you. So she's like their little slave.
Yes.
She's like a little slave girl.
Who several
but she gets the
time-
clout of being a pink lady.
Several times she implies that she has her own relationship with the shortest of the T-Birds, who definitely graduates with them, and that's fucking weird, because that 18-year-old man should stop dating that child. because she looks
There is
small.
also a line where Michael says, because she's like, I don't need no babysitter, Jiminy Jillikers, or whatever the fuck they make this kid say. And then he's like, well, how about a date? And then she's like, well, why didn't you say so? I'm like, no.
I mean, yeah, I feel like we've only touched on the sexual issues in this film, like the rapey issues, the just plain flat out sexual harassment, the flat out sexist parts of the film.
Oh, yeah.
This is problematic as fuck, but they covered it with music and dance.
There's also some implied statutory rape in the opening number from Horny Teacher.
Yes, absolutely. Who they're like, damn, you're a hot teacher. And she goes, ooh, maybe. And it's like, ma'am, those are children. Ma'am, you're a teacher and those are children. Please don't do this. Or similar thing during reproduction where the male teacher, who at least looks like he's not going to do it, but they start being sexual with him. And then he does that, the temptations kind of thing, which is like, dude, that's a child. There's
that bit where like he sees those girls coming out of the doorway and like they're very beautiful and he can barely even look at them lest he get horny. Like that was just vile. That was
but from that moment, it delivered my favorite line of the film, which is just like champagne comedy, where one of the horny ladies, everyone in this movie is so horny, walks up to the principal from the first movie and is like, I missed my last 2 periods. And she goes, don't worry, you can make them up after school, which is like, bang!
Yeah.
Comedy.
Yeah, and then she turns at the camera. I think she breaks the fourth wall in that moment
and
like walks off.
She delivers it. The student walks away and then there's a beat and then she looks at the camera, it trucks in and it plays the end of the song again. It's so good. I laughed out loud. That was really funny.
I know, I know this is trash, but I was and I know it's just a worse Grease, but I thought I honestly really enjoyed it for just these camp bits of bad comedy. I was so about it. I didn't care.
Well,
I'm all for it.
I was gonna pivot, but then I realized while we're talking about the sexual harassment angle, we got to talk about let's do it for our country. We have to.
That standout scene.
Yes.
In the worst way.
There's more to talk about after, but I would feel remiss if we pivoted away from this section without addressing it. It's a weird fucking song.
I watched it with my mouth hung open, being like, please don't make this happen. I could feel they were gearing up to a joke about her misunderstanding what she needed to do, because the whole song is him pressuring her into sex, saying we should have sex for our country, and she really thinks let's run off to war and protect our country, and she there's this general misunderstanding between the two, which is kind of funny, but it really looks like he's gonna just rape her, and then she's basically surrounded by 2 men that crash into the room, and I was like, wow, this is incredibly uncomfortable and freaky.
If they weren't locked in a bunker, it could potentially be a funny misunderstanding song, but you are so right. It's the fact that she's a young woman in a room with 3 dudes being like, root.
Yeah, I was feeling viscerally uncomfortable because she's getting there's bits where he's singing to her and he's walking and she's backing away and it's part of the choreography, but it really she's literally retreating from him and he's pushing the bed down. And again, when the 2 men pile in, I was literally just thinking get out of there. You have to get out of that room.
Yeah.
It really doesn't date well, surprisingly.
The context of the scene, by the way, is that there is a nuclear shelter that Michael uses to write their essays. One of them, DiMuccio, this movie is aggressively Italian. DiMuccio takes his partner, Sharon, who's the most into the talent show, down into the nuclear shelter, and then with the assistance of the other T-Birds, pretends that there is a war, and so they get locked in the shelter, and then he starts going, we should fuck because America wants us to before we die and I go off to war. And it's really manipulative. And then he starts physically advancing on her. And she several times is like, I don't really want to do this. And it's really, really uncomfortable.
Yeah, definitely a warning for the film because it does. Even though you know it's a joke and you know that you're probably in safe hands because it's Grease 2, you're still like, ugh.
Yeah.
Ugh. Gives you a bit of the shivers.
Yeah, it's not even a case of not aging well, because in 1982 people weren't like, that's cool. That's not okay.
No, it never was okay, and it's just such a flabbergasting moment in the middle of this very strange film to dedicate what felt like 8 minutes to coercing a young woman into sex in the face of the Russians invading.
Yeah, it's a really long song. And the fact that they wrote her being not into it means that they know that the women involved in these theoretical scenarios aren't into it. Like, that's a self-awareness
And again,
that's not present in the scene.
Yeah, and this is the same couple that at the end of the film, he turns to her and says, "Will I ever score?" And they end up together. It's a wholesome ending, guys.
And if we look back to like Grease 1, I feel, again, a difference if you look at a Rizzo character is that Rizzo is out getting her nut.
Yeah.
And like she wants to have sex. Whereas I feel like the women in this movie, and they don't have to because they're children, they don't want to have sex. And but it makes it, when you have these aggressively horny young men paired up with these women who are not ready for that, it's just such an uncomfortable tension.
Well, as reproduction shows, all of the women in the school do want to fuck. What they really hate is the way the men pressure them into it. That's what that whole song reads as to me. Because they're like, let's fuck. And then the men start going, please have sex with me. And they're like, stop.
And I gotta say, Rizzo is like an incredible... Rizzo is a standout character from Grease 1. She's very assertive, has some of the best dialogue, best moments. But I will say, like, Michelle Pfeiffer, not a great, like, basically replacement for Danny. Like, not the best lead. Stephanie's not a very well-constructed character. But I did like watching Stephanie. I was like, Stephanie is very dry. She has a good sense of humor. She's very firm about what she wants. She doesn't give any of the guys, like, a lick of her time. And I just thought I was genuinely positively surprised by Stephanie. I was like, you're not a great character. You've kind of got, like, a bit of like audacity, and I liked that about her. She wasn't the best character, but I enjoyed watching her. So
I did enjoy that about her, but I was also so confused by her journey because the first scene we see her when she's telling Johnny, "I don't want to be with you," and fair enough because God, the T-Birds are such losers.
They are.
If they were at my high school, I would have given them so many wedgies. Like, what a bunch of nerds. But when she's telling Johnny, "I don't want to do this," and all the women are like, "What, are you crazy?" And she's like, "There's more to life than making out." Cut 30 minutes into the movie and she's making out with a man whose face she hasn't seen before. And she's like, this is it. Make out is life.
There's that bit where she says to one of her friends, she's like, "I don't want to be some guy's chick." And they're like, "Are you crazy?" And I'm like, yeah, Michelle, get it. But then she learns that she does want to be some guy's chick. And that's beautiful.
It's really both Grease and Grease 2 are about like, what if we could subvert expectations and then concluding by going, nah.
But it's funny that you say that because I remember I was so angry about Grease 1. I did a lot of research into the writer of Grease 1 and why they decided to make Sandy change for Danny. And the writer literally said, people expected her to compromise and for him to compromise. But I was like, fuck it. What if one of them compromises? And he chose her. And I was like,
sick.
Why would you choose the woman in that situation? That's not subverting like a reality at all. That is exactly what a lot of women do, is that they completely compromise their own personality to make sure that a man will love them. I was like, why wouldn't you choose Danny to go fucking full fucking fledge on that?
The movie that we watched suggests that neither of them should compromise. That's the whole fucking lead.
Exactly. That's it. But he was like, they expected one of them to compromise. So I was like, fuck it. What if just one of them did? And he chose the wrong one. Me as a kid, me as like a 10-year-old girl watching Grease 1, I was so like offended by the end of it. I've never fully forgiven it. I love Grease, but I just think that ending I'll never forgive, ever. It's very emotional for me.
No, definitely. Air your laundry with this one. It's Grease. I feel like it has a lot of emotional attachments in everyone's heart.
Yeah. Oh, I'm airing my sweaty undies that I ripped out of my bum at 8 a.m. They are flapping in the wind, and I'm giving them to Claude to eat.
Ooh, yeah, give me that spicy, sensual, but also sticky.
Sriracha-soaked knickers.
Yeah. I see. For me, mine are definitely way more aioli. It's all garlic. God.
Oh, it's so creamy too.
Oh, see, I have to eat low FODMAP, so Michelle, I couldn't partake in those undies, but like, live your underpants truth.
Hey, my doctor also suggests that I should be low FODMAP. Not all of us have the willpower, though.
If I eat garlic, I'll just straight up pass out, which is such a shame because garlic is the best flavour.
Wait, just pass out? Because for me, I just shit a lot, and sometimes it's worth it for the true taste that is garlic. You just get...
Oh, sometimes... Will I eat a curry? Yes, of course. Will I eat garlic prawns? I'm not a monster. But I remember before I knew what was wrong with me and I just kept living my life, I just had one night where I was shitting myself violently and then I stood up and like fell to the ground and Tom's like, maybe you should stop doing something. I'm like, absolutely not. I refuse to change.
I get
Tom is
it.
my partner, by the way, not just someone who turns up when I shit myself. It makes it sound like he's my shit Beetlejuice.
He's the shit spirit. Hey, man. Hey.
The ghost of shit's past.
Yeah.
We've all been there.
Oh my, there's something I wanted to bring up with this film that really bothered me. I've never seen a musical with more silence in it. There are so many scenes where people could say something, or there could be a soundtrack. There's a minute of this movie where Michael is building a motorcycle in silence.
It's so true. Sometimes I would forget it was a musical. Like, they'd start singing again. I'm like, oh, yeah, that's a thing. Like, I'm watching Grease too. And I have to say, the final kiss where she walks up to Michael and she kisses him on the mouth is dead silence in the middle of this big
it's so
graduation
yuck.
ceremony. Yeah, it's so bizarre. It was just them kissing and passion
Eyes
for like 20
wide
seconds.
open.
Pure silence. Yeah.
And I feel like they did additional ADR for that because you can hear the smacks. But oh my, also with that scene, the fact that in a musical, when two characters profess they love each other, like you expect them to sing or at least to say, I love you, and everyone around them goes, ah. But in this movie, Michael leans in to Michelle Pfeiffer's ear and goes, I love you, Stephanie. And that's the end of the film. And it's so uncomfortable.
Oh my god. Yeah, it's odd choices all around. I mean, that whole end sequence is absolutely buck wild. I've ranted to so many friends of mine about how much I really hate the Shamalama Ding Dong Wap Bop Boo song in Grease 1 for being gibberish instead of an actual conclusion. But this movie really goes, yes, Stephanie and Johnny, you are king and queen of the luau, and everyone knows what that means.
Perfect.
And then we show up to Rocka Hula Luau.
Rocka Hula Luau, the
Easily.
most culturally appropriative bop in the whole film.
Easily the worst song as well. It's terrible. It's so weird. But my favorite part of it is they're going through, it's like, da 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 da, Rocka Hula Luau. It's just 12-bar blues. And they're like singing it. And then it's like this bit, it's like this drum solo. Do, 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 do. It goes on for a little longer. We're watching all of the students dance at this Rocka Hula Luau. Everything starts building up a little bit more. And then the camera goes into two of the teachers making out. And it comes out. And now it's nighttime. There's fire everywhere. They're dancing, arms in the sky in front of the fire and the water going, Rocka, Luau, Luau, Luau.
The change of time was it threw me so much. I didn't understand why so much time had elapsed in this little event.
Oh my goodness, but it lends way to probably my favorite comedy moment in the scene. I mean, honorable mention as well for the teacher who is experiencing extreme emotional difficulties and tries to kill themselves in the pool. Great moment at the luau. But the best moment of the film for me is when it's the luau. Johnny and Michelle Pfeiffer, they're the king and queen of the luau for whatever reason.
Sure.
They get lifted into the middle of the pool on a ceremonial throne, and then the bad guys turn up, and then Johnny says, paddle, and then instead of getting up and jumping in the very shallow pool to run away, they're stranded trying to paddle away in a 1 meter shallow pool. It's great.
It's so weird. This is what I mean. They're all chanting luau, 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 luau with these fire as they bring out the king and queen of the students. Like, I feel like it's getting Lord of the Flies. Like, what the fuck is going on? They're going
Someone's
feral.
getting sacrificed at the end of this graduation ceremony.
And Michael, at the end of the movie when he returns from the dead, like, I know that this is probably a whole school year's worth of film, but I imagine it is, but it feels like in 1 week he went from some guy who couldn't ride a motorcycle to a crusty demon. He jumps the entirety of the luau. It is wild. I was pissing myself laughing. I could not handle it.
He goes so high over them and everyone else barely jumps and just lands straight in the pool, potentially seriously injuring Johnny and Steph. Like, it's crazy how much no one gets hurt.
Michelle, you mentioned, am I correct in remembering that the reason that you know Grease 2 so well is that your little sister was obsessed with it?
Yes. So I didn't mention it up front this time, but this is one of the shockingly large percentage of these movies that I have seen an innumerable number of times, thanks to my sister.
Was this Kangaroo Jack was also a part of it?
Yeah.
Not on the list, but High School Musical 2 I know was also a favorite of hers.
High School Musical 2.
Specifically 2. Yeah, my sister really loves Grease, and then my mum one time after my sister just destroyed the DVD, went out to buy Grease, and it only came in a double pack with Grease 2, and then my sister found a brand new thing to obsess over. So I've seen this movie like 30 to 40 times. Watching it again,
Yeah.
it was just a trip down memory lane for me. I could have done this whole episode without rewatching it.
I have to say, like, I wish I brought this up at the beginning, but I was really excited to watch this film because I knew that this is a film you have had to watch 30 or 40 times.
Yeah.
And in the entire time I've known you, you have mentioned Grease 2 and moments in Grease 2 various times. So it was almost like an honor finally sitting down to watch it. I was like, wow, like this is a part of my life because of Chelsea obsessing over it.
I've gotten to share it with you, and I've gotten to share it with you, Alice. I'm welcoming everyone into Grease 2. I am legitimately obsessed with this movie. It's like this movie burrows into your brain. It's like a brain parasite or a tapeworm. Like you see it at first and you're like, this is fucking bad. And then like a few hours later, you're like thinking of one of the songs and you're like, this isn't a good song, but I also really like it. And I'm like always thinking about this movie. It's so easy to think of. Trust me, if you guys watch it one more time, you'll go, I don't know, it's kind of camp.
I want to. No, I want to. After my first viewing, I will definitely want to watch it again. I don't care that it's bad. It's just charming in a really inexplicable way.
It's everyone trying their absolute best
Yes.
for 2 hours.
Yeah.
And I love that.
Yeah, and it's like the songs, it's weird because like Score Tonight, the like 10-minute odyssey about bowling and reproductions, like they're not like anywhere close to as good or catchy as songs in Grease 1 or anything, but like they weirdly bring me joy. They kind of like sit in a nice part of your brain. They scratch an itch even if they're bad. It's great.
And I have to, this is like the last thing I really wanted to bring up.
Please.
Is Michael is the Sandy of Grease 2. His hopelessly devoted moment is him
my
wandering
God.
around singing the Real Me song. And I
Charades.
adored it. Yeah, it was so awful. and
Abigail
so
pissed right
terrible.
off.
I don't care because like that's the thing. I know it's bad, but I loved it because it was so bad. Like I didn't care. I was like, this is tragic, and I'm so about it. This is the worst possible version of a hopelessly devoted moment, and I'm so for it.
I actually have had this theory that I keep joking about with my girlfriend that every musical has that one song that you kind of want to skip.
Always.
Every
Always.
musical, every single time. And that was the one for this one. It's so
Absolutely.
It becomes such a great joke, by the way, when you're watching a musical with someone and you just repeat the line. You know how every musical has that one song and then you're like, yeah, okay, cool. We both want this to just be over. We're not into this.
But I have to say the one musical I've encountered that doesn't have that for me is Sound of Music. There isn't one song in Sound of Music I would skip. No. I think they're all a banger. All of them.
I shamefully have never seen Sound of Music, so I don't know.
Let's get on that, Michelle.
I know they sing the one song about the names for each of the notes, which already have names. They're just letters. I don't know why they need more names now.
They've got solfege, babe.
You watch Sound of Music and you're like, holy shit, I forgot that this film is like every song is a banger. Like there's like one song after another and you're like, fuck me, I didn't realize that this song was in Sound of Music. So you'll be
Right.
delighted, I think, when you watch it.
There are two thoughts I wanted to bring up about this movie.
Absolutely, please.
I mean, there's so many thoughts I want
Yeah.
to bring up about this movie. But a cursed talent show aside, and all the cultural appropriation, and the fact that Chris McDonald is inexplicably 10 years older at the end of the film, and that's fantastic. I want to give a special shout out to Michael doing the worst playing the piano acting I think I've seen in any film, and it's just delightfully bad.
It is. Like, when you see the audition, he is doing the classic, like, each hand is just going down alternately, and that's it. And then he's just talking to Dolores. There's no effort whatsoever.
Oh, yeah, he really had to focus on Dolores being like, oh, jinkies, or geez, I can't fucking stand Dolores. You can cut her from the film, like,
Yeah.
oh, Dolores. I have so much Dolores-related rage.
Yeah, Dolores also just posed a bunch of questions. Who is she? Why is she there? I know we've covered her already, but I spent most of the film, because I missed maybe one line of dialogue, being like, why is she here? I don't understand her.
And she turns up at the end, she's like, oh, this adult man, we fucking, bye.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
Yeah.
no, Dolores, don't.
And it's chill.
Fuck.
1982 was a different time.
One of the last things that I wanted to address, though, was like, okay, so I only found out from the summary on Wikipedia that they are called the Cycle Lords.
I thought that was a term you made up
No.
for the overview,
No,
and I
it's
was
not.
like, nice.
Because it's weird because in Grease 1, there's the rival gang, the Scorpions, who seem to consist entirely of someone they refer to at one point as Craterface, who looks like a 30-year-old man.
Most likely.
And I'm like, why is this grown man harassing these high schoolers? But then it's like, okay, maybe he's in high school. If we give it that in Grease 1 he's in high school, he comes back in this as the leader of this gang. Why is he still harassing high schoolers? Why is he harassing them outside of a fucking bowling alley? And why is he harassing them at their graduation? Like, what biker gang is he?
Michelle, I'd agree with you if it were not for the past 2 years, because after a pandemic, I too would go and harass high schoolers for something to do.
Just go sit outside of where they hang out on a bike.
Yeah, be like, I'll bash you, and then drive away.
It's such like weird conflict.
The idea of you, Alice Tovey, bashing anyone is laughable. You're too sweet.
I did almost get into a fist fight in year 4, but then the kids started crying and I apologized profusely, and that was the last time I threatened physical violence.
I feel like if I did a shit on your bed, you'd apologize to me. You know what I mean? You're that kind of sunshine person.
I shouldn't have had a
You
bed.
really are. I'm sorry about my bed. It shouldn't have been there.
I do feel, however, that if I shat on your bed, you would actually break that line and beat me up.
I'd say thank you.
Yeah, I think that's because maybe I'm lower on this food chain.
No, Michelle, I'm a growing girl and I need to be fertilized. You're a gift. Is this good? Is this what people want from podcasts?
Yeah, this is what people want. That if our admittedly small listenership has shown anything, this is what they want. They want to talk. They want to hear us talk about shitting and beating each other up.
Yeah, that's it.
Oh,
We're
thank
on
God.
trend.
That's so what I've got here, babe.
Yeah.
I do think that a lot of talk about fist fights and like defecating has definitely been a recurring theme, so don't you worry. I think I've threatened
Beautiful.
to like nakedly brawl a lot of people on this podcast. We're definitely on trend.
Yeah, I think that suits the energy of this. Now, I have a lot of pieces of trivia, so would you like me to launch into the trivia?
Please.
IMDb Trivia!
So, director Patricia Birch said the movie was originally going to be titled Son of Grease.
Fuck.
Producers wanted something more straightforward, so it was switched to Grease 2. However, Maxwell Caulfield lobbied hard to get it changed back, saying that Grease 2 was a boring title, and I love that he preferred Son of Grease.
In what way is it Son of Grease? Who is he the son of? I don't understand. Like, he's not even the same character as Danny. He's more of a Sandy. I don't get it.
None of them are related.
Too many questions.
Yeah, Maxwell Caulfield saying a name is too boring is irony.
That's good.
Yeah, also, like, maybe you have trivia about this, but did Maxwell Caulfield go on to do anything else interesting? Because I've never heard of this man.
Yes and no. So a whole thing is that at this point, and like just before 1982, Maxwell Caulfield had been in a few movies and was being hailed as like the next Richard Gere, the next John Travolta, the next James Dean.
Wow.
They were like, damn, this guy, he's charming and attractive. Michelle Pfeiffer
huge.
was in like nothing. Other people considered for the role were like Pat Benatar. They were looking at like notable people. I know.
That would have been fun, to be honest. Like, I love Michelle Pfeiffer, but Pat Benatar in a musical would have been a good time. But also, yeah, I don't know Michelle Pfeiffer from anything prior to this, so I assume this was like a breakout for her.
So here's the whole story of this movie is that was them beforehand, right? But then, and this movie was like super advertised because it's Grease 2, right? But it flopped. Michelle Pfeiffer had shot another movie before this, but came out after. So Michelle Pfeiffer wasn't really hit by this because that movie hit. It didn't really matter. So she still went on to be super successful. Maxwell Caulfield later went on to like be in that TV show Dynasty, and then after that, as an older man, became more notable. Yeah.
Oh my God. That's fun.
He has
Good for
said,
him.
though, that it broke his heart watching his co-star get so successful when his career completely dried up the instant this movie came out.
She
and it took him
was so
10
much more
years to get over
charismatic,
it.
though. Like, she really was. Even on like, I enjoyed every line she delivered, even if it was a terrible line. But he was so, as you said, Alice, forgettable. He really was.
She was incredible in this movie, but I can't imagine like if you had been told that you were the up and comer and then there's just in an instant nothing. Like, that would be hard to get over.
It's clear he has a lot of charm on screen, like an undeniable charm. I just feel like, he just wasn't delivering what was on the page. He wasn't delivering like the sex appeal that a Sandy or a Danny has. And especially, and again, in a movie that is all about sex, to be so sexless.
Yeah, he was just wimpy.
I had to do extra research on this one, including pulling up an article from People magazine in 2003 because I really wanted to get some of the details. Original plans were for this to be the second installment in a franchise of 4 movies and a TV series. When the movie flopped, plans for a franchise were thrown out. Years later, however, in 1999, a script for Grease 3 emerged and the project was announced in 2003. This would have had Didi Khan, who we mentioned earlier, Frenchie, returning as executive producer, with Justin Timberlake and Britney Spears starring as the children of Danny and Sandy. Additionally, Christina Aguilera was sought to be the daughter of Rizzo and for members of NSYNC to be supporting cast.
Yes.
I mourn the film that never was.
In 2004,
beautiful.
The project was shelved, but the script was later readapted into High School Musical for the Disney Channel.
Oh, there you go.
God. You're fucking kidding. High School Musical is the child of Grease.
Yes. And
that makes
truly
so
is
much
the son.
sense.
it does. Like, the moment you hear it, you're like, of course it is. That explains everything about that movie.
I mean, what this proves is that Chelsea's taste is cohesive, that it really bleeds into one another.
Yeah,
For
Chelsea
very
being
good
my
reason.
sister, she also loves High School Musical, so she likes that narrative.
Shout out to Chelsea. I mean, you can pick 'em, babe.
She can. That's insane. Can you imagine a musical with Justin Timberlake, Britney Spears? And by the way, all I'm thinking of is that iconic photo of them both dressed in denim at a music award ceremony. And Christina Aguilera is the child of Rizzo. That's too
Yeah.
much.
Abigail,
That's
what you're
too
missing
much.
out on is all the members of NSYNC would be there. Joey Fatone would be in this movie offering salami. It would be hot as.
Surely they would be the T-Birds. The NSYNC would be T-Birds. As you said, offering salami, hitting on women, being sex pests. It would have been incredible.
I hope they all have frosted tips as well. That's the dream. That's what I'm envisioning.
Mwah.
Oh, that's incredible. That's brightened my life.
Holy
but I'm
shit.
also mourning something that, never happened.
I know.
Oh, we're probably going to get some shit Grease vibe as well with like Shawn Mendes or something. And it's just, it's not going to be the same.
This wasn't a piece of trivia that I had, but there is actually announced. In 2008, it was reported that Paramount was planning a new sequel to Grease that would debut straight to DVD, but the project never came to fruition. But in 2019, it was announced that a prequel to the original film entitled Summer Lovin' with John August attached to write the screenplay was in works
John
at Paramount. And I've also heard, as recently as 2020 or 2021, they were going to do a streaming TV series called Rise of the Pink Ladies, which is really
Yes.
funny.
Unsurprised.
It's like a parody title. Like, that's the title you write when you're making fun of how they're doing streaming series.
Rise of the Pink Ladies. I'm not surprised that they're still trying to like revamp the Grease franchise. It is a wonderful franchise. It made a lot of money. People are so familiar with it. I get why they're still trying to fucking beat a dead horse here. I just hope it's good.
Or so bad that it's fantastic.
And that it appears on this podcast in a future rendition.
Okay, so I love this one. So do you remember the twins?
Yes,
Yes.
I was wondering
Yes.
about the twins. Like, who are those twins? Who played them?
So Gene Segal and Liz Segal, who played the twins, were each hired at different auditions. It wasn't until they arrived on the set that the director realized that they had hired identical twins, and the roles were created for them on set.
I'm sorry. That's absolutely chaotic, and I love it.
Yeah,
But
that's an
serious,
insane
fuck's
coincidence.
sake. Like, casting agents, review your files.
Yeah. They were just like, yeah, there was this one woman, I liked her. Another woman who looked similar. Sure, I guess I remember. Did they think it was the same person, or did they just not realize that these two people who look identical were related to each other?
Oh my god, they are the sisters of Katie Segal.
Oh, wow, they are.
Yeah.
They're also...
And like they're part of the Segal family.
This is just a very small piece of trivia that I enjoyed. Because this is on the note of the horniness of this movie, many network TV versions completely cut the song Reproduction.
For good reason.
A crime.
Musically a crime, but it's like if you're going to cut it for how would you play this movie on an airplane? You know,
Yeah.
It'd be a great flight, just everyone just getting a little bit wriggly in their seats, being like, I too like Roots.
There's a lot of trips to the bathroom in that flight.
The Mile High Club really soared on any flight that was showing Grease too.
No, the cut down airplane version is a bunch of good friends go to a talent show, and that's
Because
it. But
what's
one of
wrong
them
with
dies.
liking people? Am I right? Sometimes you don't need to score. That's what I found out in Grease too.
We live, we learn.
This is my last piece of trivia specifically for the end of it. Several scenes were cut from the film, as is normal for a lot of films, including Frenchie trying to help Michael become a cool writer, Michael talking to Stephanie and comforting her after the talent show. So he was present after his persona dies, but they cut that out, I assume, to make the audience not know. Goose accidentally slamming a door into Rhonda's nose, which you might remember there was one scene in which she had a broken nose.
Yes.
Oh.
And like the joke is that earlier in the movie she talks about wanting a nose job and people
Right.
think that's
Yes,
it,
yes,
but
yes.
Goose just accidentally injures her, but they cut out that scene so they just don't explain it. Davey, who the fuck is Davey? Oh, he's the shortest of the T-Birds. Davey helping Dolores stuff her bra at the luau so that she can be dating material for him. I didn't read that.
Oh my
Holy
god.
shit. What the fuck? Oh my god.
Don't touch her.
Thank
She's like
goodness they cut
prepubescent.
that.
Yeah.
Oh my word.
I put in this trivia just for this, which was a sequence at the very end where Michael and Stephanie fly off into the sunset on a motorcycle, just like the ending of Grease 1.
I actually kind of wish they did keep it in just for like a
me
bit
too.
of consistency.
I do love that Grease 1 is all about cars and this one's all about motorcycles.
Yeah, that is fun. Didn't even think of
Because
that.
that means I feel like Grease 3 should either be about scooters or about like planes. Like I need to go bigger or smaller.
Segways, the way of the
Yes.
future, they roll into the sun.
But the idea of like razor scooters being the weapon of choice in Grease 3, I'd
Yeah.
watch that in a heartbeat.
Oh, that shit hurts. Like when you're a kid and you used to like whack your razor scooter around it, it'd bash you in the ankle.
Oh, that was the most, yeah. I don't even want to think about it. It's almost traumatizing.
I want to
can
pick up
feel
on
it.
something you said though, Abigail, about like the intertextuality of this movie, because there's just so many moments that they don't take, and a big one that got my goat was that they call him Shakespeare. This is Michael. They call him Shakespeare because he's writing all the Shakespeare essays and he's smart and British, and they're studying Hamlet at school. They should have been studying Twelfth Night, because Twelfth Night is a movie about
Yes.
putting on a costume to trick someone in to falling in love with you.
It's like
Yeah.
you studied
Why not take the bait?
screenwriting or something. How do you know all of this? How'd you get so smart?
so smart. But it's just, all these missed opportunities. We're just blue balling here.
From what I read of the writer, I doubt he's ever read or watched 12th Night. So
Well, then watch She's the Man and get back to me, baby.
She's the Man. I honestly think cinema peaked in 2006 with the release of She's the Man. Nothing got better.
A perfect film.
Oh, honestly.
My friend, shout out to my friend Tom Craggs from high school, who asked his girlfriend once if there was a Shakespearean play called She's the Man.
yes and no.
Hope you're well, buddy.
The danger of appropriations.
She's the Man is genuinely incredible, and I love that Amanda Bynes talked about literally feeling dysphoric at watching her play a man on screen. And I'm like, yeah, because it's tragic, but it's like,
real.
yeah, this is a thing.
It's so real.
And she's a badass hunky dude.
Yeah. Which, by the way, I know we were doing the funny ha-has before, but I do feel like the third Grease should have been about skateboarding. If it was the 90s, if it was written in the 90s, it should have been about skateboarding instead of cars and
Is
motorcycles.
Tony Hawk the lead?
Oh my
Tony
God,
Hawk's the
yes.
one skateboarder I know
Holy
as a
shit.
reference. So that's
And
all I've got
Bam
to touch on.
Margera is one of the T-Birds.
All right. Do you guys want to hear some reviews?
Yes.
Please.
In contrast to the last few episodes, this has 39% on Rotten Tomatoes, which is huge. The last
We've had
couple have been
two
at zero.
zeros in a row.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
And we're still in the 4.4s on IMDb as well. And I only took two, they're not quite reviews, but I took two quotes. Barry Diller, who was at the time the CEO of Paramount, the company that released this movie, said the film was on no level as good as the first. The quality isn't there. As well, Jim Jacobs, co-creator of Grease, described it at the time as awful. The Pits. In an interview 27 years later, Jacobs noted that Grease 2 still brings a brief frown to his face.
A brief frown.
Here is some IMDb reviews. This one is, yes, the movie sucks, but not as much as some. by BTRA Lover 100. Don't know what BTRA
That is so sweet. Not as that's really nice. BTA Lover 100, good for you.
And the review goes, yes, this movie sucks. Pretty badly too. But a weighted average of 3.2. Is this film really as bad as Sorority House Massacre 2? I think not. The lead actress alone deserves at least a 5. And it's the songs that suck more than the singing. Anyway, I give it a 10 just to try and raise it above a 3.2. I spent hours trying to find a movie with a lower weighted average and haven't been able to yet. 10 out of 10.
Wait, so 3.2 was the initial score of it?
Yes. So over the last 2 decades, because I'm pretty sure this is from 2003, it has gone up by 1.2.
That's pretty
This would have been way... Yeah. The cultural reevaluation of Grease 2 is upon us, and I'm here for it.
Yeah, honestly, I don't think it's as low as a 3.2. I honestly also, we'll get into this later, but I also think 4.4 is pretty terrible for the production value on this unit.
Here's another review titled, Grease 2 stands on its own. People shouldn't compare. And it's written by Zanoni, which was Michelle Pfeiffer's character's last name, so you know this guy's a fan.
Oh,
this person's a fan.
Mega fan.
You know, I am sick of people comparing this movie to its predecessor. It was never meant to be Grease. It is its own movie, with Michelle Pfeiffer in a role she was born to play. It's a hip and cool movie with some great tunes, some corny tunes as well, but all in all, a fun time. I wish people would cut it some slack and give it the respect it deserves. Never hurt anyone. It never did anything wrong. People should just sit back and enjoy the innocence and magic that is Grease 2. It is a lot better than the sick, twisted movies that studios put out these days, that's for sure. Just good, clean fun. The music and feeling go on forever. 10 out of 10.
Clean?
I know.
Where?
Clean fun. And also, it's not, sick or... it's got, literally, a sexual coercion scene. It's not clean.
I like good, clean fun. Like singing about fucking and trying to trap women into sex. This last review is titled Awesome by Abby by Bevo13678.
Bevo!
Now a recurring reviewer 3 times.
Oh my god. Okay, so Alice, just for a bit of context, last episode, or rather in Critters 3, we found out that Ross Robinson and Bevo were these recurring reviewers that we were finding reviews of and stumbling across, and they've become the matriarch and patriarch of the humble rating descending world. It's really exciting that they, out of their own free will, are going through the list like we are, just unintentionally. That's insane.
Great.
I love it.
I'm so excited to hear from Bevo.
Yeah, please.
Well, Bevo's review was, what a terrible movie. You'd be mad to give it more than 3 stars out of 10 stars. 10 out of 10.
Bevo is consistent in their inconsistencies, and I love it.
Let's start with Alice. What was your review?
My review of this film, wow. Again, never has there been a movie in existence with so much plot where nothing happens. But you've got to give it points for effort, and you've got to give it points for star power. It has all the ingredients of a good movie. It just doesn't deliver the cake. It's just a wet, sloppy pile of batter that could have been so much more.
What do you give it out of 10? I don't like giving things anything out of 10, but IMDb does, and that's the format of the fucking podcast.
Yeah, get around it.
No, you're so right. I think I have to agree with Bevo, not in their final assertion, but I do think that this is a solid 3 out of 10 movie because there are some great bits. Reproduction is genuinely funny, but you just can't get past the flaws of this film. So, yeah, apologies to you, Maxwell, Cartwell, Carter, whatever your name is. I'm sorry that this movie sunk your career.
Maxwell Carter. That's beautiful.
Love it. 3 out of 10. Abby, what was your review?
Look, Alice is coming at it from a perspective of not having watched 70 terrible films before this. So for me, it was pretty good. I was yeah, it looks like a movie and I'm engaged and I'm enjoying it. And a couple of bits made me chuckle. And yeah, there's a lot of blurred lines of consent, but I didn't want to throttle myself throughout the viewing experience. So for that, I give it's a 4.4 on IMDb. I think it's maybe for me, just again, my warped perception, 4.5. Just a little decimal point over. That's me.
Nice.
That's what I
I have a slightly different feeling towards this movie. I described it before as like a tapeworm. I think it's more like I am a rhino in the savannah and this movie is a bird pecking bugs off of me, in that I am like, I should normally shoo you away. You are bad, and yet you are scratching an itch I did not know could be cured.
It's grooming me.
Yeah. I would watch this movie again, and I don't just mean one more time, I mean multiple times. I want to share it with everyone. It's like, as you said, it has everything in it that could be good.
Yes.
It's like, it's not great. It doesn't have the magic of Grease, but there's like something happening in it that really is the bird that scratches my back. Like, I don't know. It ages well with repeat viewings, even if the sexual politics of the movie are incredibly abhorrent. But I watched Baise-Moi, so I'm actually on some level okay with it.
Again, warped perception coming into this.
Yeah. The rating of this movie, like, this is where like the rating system, as we've said many times, breaks down, because it's like, am I addressing it for quality or joy? Our mid-ground barometer, as we've said repeatedly, is A Good Year, a movie that is fine and yet makes people feel nothing.
Yeah.
I like this movie more than that. I had a better time watching it than other movies that I think are ostensibly good, but I'm like, yeah, they're okay. Is it joy or quality? I don't know. I'm going to give this a 5.2 because that allows me plausible deniability that that's not a good score, but it's high enough that I'm like, yeah, because I enjoyed it and I'll watch it again.
I mean it. Like, it was an honor watching it because of all the things I'd heard about it. I felt almost privileged to be sitting down to be watching this absolute train wreck of a film.
Yeah, look, I've said before that I have a long history with bad movies, and I still underestimated how many movies on this list I would have a personal connection to. That is now the theme, is how much I've already seen on this fucking list. Well, that was Grease 2. Please follow us on social media. You can find us on Twitter @RateDescendPod, TikTok @RatingDescending, or please email us at ratingdescending@gmail.com.
Or you can find us on our personal accounts. I'm on Insta under Abigail J. Ward.
You could also find me on Twitter and Instagram at Michelle.St.Clair. Alice, where can we find you?
And what do you have to plug?
What's my thing to plug? Nothing to plug at the moment, my love. The world is closed and I am in my flat typing at my laptop doing little projects. But you can follow me on Instagram at Altove, so that's ALTOVE. Or you can search Alice Tovey on Twitter, TikTok, and Facebook. Those are the ones. Yeah, go to my website.
Yeah.
I got stuff going on. Maybe one day. I love you all.
She's beautiful. Yeah. You'll see her elaborate outfits and big, bold eyeshadow. That's what you can be prepared for.
Oh, I love you both. It's been such a treat to talk about this absolute dumpster fire.
I hope so. And hey, when Doggo is allowed to show again, we'll pitch it on the podcast because I had a great time watching it.
Thank you, sweets.
Abby, what are we watching next week?
Next week, we are watching Secret Obsession, which I know nothing about.
It was a Netflix movie that when it came out in 2019, when it came out, people were like, ooh, it's got like Brenda Song in it. It was like a thriller. Oh, it'll be released just in time for Halloween. I'm keen for it.
Very fun. Well, don't forget to join us next week, guys. And thank you, Alice, for joining along.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Hell yeah. Hey, everyone at home, fucking reproduce. That's the lesson of this episode.
Reproduction.
Yeah, hell yeah. Everyone go out and fuck. Everyone go out and and create arbitrary rules about how you have to date other demographics of people, and then absolutely adhere to it. That's my pitch. That's what I, Michelle St. Clair, believe in, and what I'm putting out onto the internet.
Happy roots.